I had never been on a flight before. The idea of leaving the ground, soaring into the clouds, and putting my trust in a giant machine terrified me, but something inside me whispered that it was time to break free. Time to see the world I had only dreamed about. So, with trembling hands and a racing heart, I stepped onto that plane, alone, unsure and completely unaware that this journey would change my life forever. The airport buzzed with strangers, announcements, and hurried footsteps. My ticket read Seat 18A, a window seat just like I had imagined. As I struggled with my bag, trying to appear confident, I heard a deep voice behind me, calm, steady, and commanding. "Need a hand?" I turned, and that's when I saw him. He wasn't just a man, he was something else, like a painting that had come to life. Dressed in his pilot uniform, tall, sharp-jawed, eyes as deep as midnight. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. He smiled and something fluttered inside me. Something new. Something dangerous. "I'm Zane," he said, offering his hand. I barely managed to whisper, "Alara." That was all it took. One word, one look, and my world tilted on its axis. As the flight began to board, I noticed whispers around me. Passengers admiring the mysterious pilot, who looked like he belonged in a movie, but I couldn't focus on them. My eyes kept drifting toward the cockpit, wondering if I'd see him again. When I finally settled into my seat, the engines roared to life, and fear returned. My fingers gripped the armrest as the plane prepared for takeoff. Then, his voice filled the cabin, clear, soothing, strong. "This is your captain speaking." I closed my eyes, letting his voice calm the storm inside me. And in that moment, as the plane lifted off the ground, something inside me lifted too. A part of me that had been hidden, buried under fear and rules, finally began to wake up. I didn't know where this flight would take me, but I knew one thing for sure. The moment I looked into his eyes, my journey was no longer just about the destination. It was about him. And just like that, with the clouds beneath me and his voice in my ears, my innocence took flight. The flight had just settled into the clouds, smooth and steady, like floating in a dream. I pressed my forehead gently against the cool glass of the window, watching the endless sky stretch beyond the horizon. Somewhere beneath the calm silence in the cabin, my heartbeat drummed wildly, not from fear anymore, but from something far more unfamiliar, something dangerously close to desire. Suddenly, a jolt. The plane shook, first lightly, then with a sharp dip that made my stomach twist. Gasps echoed around me. My hand clutched the seat tighter. I wasn't ready for this kind of turbulence, not in the air, and not in my heart. The seatbelt sign blinked above me. A stewardess tried to soothe nervous passengers, but panic was rising like a wave. My breath quickened. Then, his voice returned. Strong. Reassuring. "This is Captain Zane. We're passing through a mild storm cell. Please remain calm. Keep your seatbelts fastened. We've got this." Something about his voice silenced the fear in the cabin, and in me. It was like he wasn't just flying the plane, he was holding the whole world steady. Moments later, as the turbulence eased, I felt a soft tap on my shoulder. I turned, and there he was. Zane, kneeling slightly beside me, concern in his eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked gently, his voice low, so only I could hear. I nodded, but my voice failed me. Up close, he was even more magnetic. A faint scent of coffee and sky lingered on him. His presence alone felt like a shield around me. "I noticed you looked uneasy during takeoff," he said, eyes never leaving mine. "First flight?" "Yes," I whispered, cheeks warm. He smiled, and I swear it reached the deepest part of me. "You're brave, and braver than you think." With that, he gave a soft nod and disappeared down the aisle. But something had shifted inside me. It wasn't just the fear of flying I had overcome, it was the fear of feeling. I leaned back, heart still pounding, replaying every word, every glance. His voice echoed in my chest like a song I didn't want to end. And though we were still flying through clouds, something told me I'd already begun falling. Not from the sky, but into something far more dangerous. Him. The storm outside grew louder, casting lightning across the clouds like cracks in the sky. The captain's voice came on again, this time serious. "Due to weather complications, we'll be making an emergency landing in Marseille. Estimated delay, overnight. We apologize for the inconvenience." Gasps, groans, and confusion buzzed through the cabin. But not me. My heart skipped for an entirely different reason. One night, one unexpected stop, and maybe one more chance to see him. After we landed, chaos took over the terminal. Delayed passengers scrambled for hotels. I stood in the middle of it, unsure, tired, lost in a country I'd never been to. The airport lights felt harsh, the voices too loud, until I heard his. "You look like you could use some help," Zane said, standing just a few feet away, luggage slung effortlessly over his shoulder, a calmness in his eyes that soothed everything inside me. "I didn't book a hotel," I admitted, biting my lip. He smiled. "Neither did I. Guess that makes us travel companions for the night." And just like that, we were walking side by side into the soft rain of Marseille. The streets shimmered under golden lamps. I don't know how or when our hands brushed, or how the silence between us became so comforting, but every step made my heart louder, more reckless. We found a small, quiet inn tucked between ivy-covered walls, only one room left. He looked at me, giving me the choice. I nodded nervously, yet surely. He promised he'd take the couch. I believed him. Later, we sat across from each other in the tiny dining room downstairs, candlelight flickering between us, jazz humming in the background, wine glasses untouched. He asked about my dreams. I told him everything, that I wanted to travel, but I'd always been too afraid. That I wrote about adventures I'd never lived. "You don't seem afraid to me," he whispered. "You seem like someone waiting to be set free." My breath caught. I searched his face, and for the first time, I saw a shadow behind his eyes. Pain, guilt, something locked away. Then it happened. As he reached for his wallet to pay, a small photo slipped out, landing face up on the table. A woman, dark-haired, smiling. But what stunned me was the crimson smear across the bottom corner of the photo. Dried, faint, but still there. Zane froze, eyes locked on the photo. Then slowly, he reached out and tucked it back inside. "I shouldn't have let you see that," he said softly, the air turning colder. "Who was she?" I asked, almost afraid of the answer. He looked at me, something breaking behind his calm facade. Someone I couldn't save. And with that, he stood and walked away, leaving behind only the candlelight and a silence that weighed more than words. That night, as I lay on the bed pretending to sleep, I listened to the soft creak of the couch, as he turned restlessly. Outside, the storm had passed, but inside me, a different one had begun. I had come looking for adventure, but I had just stepped into a mystery, one wrapped in danger, tragedy, and a man I couldn't stop falling for. The next evening arrived, wrapped in an uneasy calm. The rain had stopped, but the air still held the scent of yesterday's storm. I hadn't spoken to Zane since the photo. He had kept his distance, polite, controlled and quiet, but I could feel it. The tension between us hummed like static in the air, something unsaid, something waiting to break. As the golden sky melted into dusk, I found him standing alone on the balcony of the inn, watching the horizon. He didn't turn when I stepped closer. "You didn't sleep last night," I said gently. "Neither did you," he replied without looking at me. "I heard you toss and turn." There was silence, deep and heavy. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "for asking about her." He looked at me then. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. "You had every right to ask," he said, voice low. "You just didn't deserve the answer." Before I could respond, he surprised me. "Come with me tonight," he said. "There's a little place nearby. No cameras, no noise, just good food and silence, if you want it." I hesitated for only a breath, then nodded. The restaurant was hidden in a quiet alley, with ivy crawling over candlelit windows and soft jazz playing in the background. We sat in a corner booth, away from the world. The air between us was thick with things we hadn't said, but somehow it felt safe, honest. He ordered for both of us in French, and I couldn't help but smile. There was something about the way he spoke, the way he moved, like he belonged everywhere. As the meal came and went, laughter started to return, soft at first, then lighter. Our fingers brushed once, then again, and the third time, neither of us pulled away. "You're not what I expected," I told him. "And what did you expect?" "A pilot with a perfect life, cocky, untouchable." He smirked. "I'm not perfect, and I'm barely holding it together." I leaned in. "Tell me why." He stared into his glass for a moment, then finally, he spoke. "She was my fiancée. Her name was Livia. We were supposed to get married the week after her flight, but that plane never landed. They said it was pilot error, and I was the one flying. The words hit me like wind through an open door. My breath caught, but, you're still flying, so you weren't. The investigation cleared me, he said quietly, but the guilt didn't. Her family never forgave me, and neither did I. Silence fell over the table like nightfall. I stopped believing in love after that, he said. Until now, I didn't know what to say. His pain, raw and open, sat between us like an old wound still bleeding. I reached across the table and took his hand in mine. He didn't pull away, he just held it tighter. We sat like that for a long time, under dim lights and soft music, speaking no words, but saying everything. That night, I didn't fall asleep right away. I stayed awake in the quiet, my thoughts wrapped around him, around the ghost he carried, the truth he finally shared, and the way he looked at me across that candlelit table like I was the first light he'd seen in years. Some things feel wrong, yet they feel so real. Some connections are forbidden, yet they pull you deeper than any rule ever could. And somewhere between guilt and gravity, between grief and growing feelings, I was starting to fall for the man who had stopped believing in love. The next morning, Marseille was quiet, but something in the air had shifted. The sun peeked through the clouds, casting golden stripes across the hotel room floor, but I felt it, the weight of something coming. Zayn stood by the window, his phone pressed to his ear, his jaw tight. His voice was low, sharp, filled with tension I hadn't heard before. No, that's impossible. That case was closed. Find out who reopened it. He hung up and turned, startled to see me awake. He tried to cover it with a smile, but I wasn't fooled. What's going on? I asked softly. Nothing you need to worry about, he said, walking toward the bed. Don't do that, I whispered. Don't shut me out now. Not after everything. He sat beside me, exhaled deeply, and ran a hand through his hair. Someone's digging into Livia's crash again. Anonymous emails, new photos, things that weren't in the original file. Does that mean? It means someone doesn't want me to move on, he said, voice darker now. And they're willing to drag you into this if they have to. Goosebumps crawled over my skin. The safe little world we had created in that hotel room was cracking. Within an hour, we were back at the airport. Our tickets reroute, a new flight, new destination, no goodbyes. But as we approached the gate, Zayn suddenly stopped. His hand gripped my wrist, gently but firmly. Walk slowly, he said under his breath. And don't turn around. My pulse skipped. There's someone behind us. A man in black. He's been following since the hotel. Every step I took after that felt like a movie. A thriller I hadn't auditioned for. My mind spun with questions. Who was following us? Why now? What did they want? We boarded the plane without incident, but the tension followed us into the sky. As we ascended, I looked at Zayn, his gaze locked straight ahead, his jaw clenched like he was fighting more than gravity. He leaned toward me. I don't know if this is about Livia, or if someone's trying to pin something on me, but whoever they are, they think I know something. Something worth killing for. I stared at him, my heart racing. And do you? His eyes met mine, haunted, honest. I think I do now. Silence hung between us as the clouds passed below. I'm sorry, he whispered. I wanted to protect you from this. I'm not afraid, I said quietly, even though I was. Not when I'm with you. And I meant it. Somehow, between the danger and the darkness, I trusted him more than anyone I'd ever known. He had shown me his scars, and now, I was willing to wear them too. Because this wasn't just about a crash anymore. This was about secrets buried in the sky, and the love that dared to survive them. And whether we were flying toward freedom or falling into something far worse, I knew I'd chosen my pilot. Our next stop was Barcelona, but the city felt like a blur. Streets filled with color, laughter, music, and yet all I could feel was the shadow that followed us. Zayn had become more silent, always watching, always scanning, and for the first time I wondered, was he running from something, or worse, was he hiding something from me? That evening, as we checked into a quiet seaside hotel, he handed over 2 passports, one for him, and one, with my face on it, under a false name. My throat tightened. What is this? A backup plan, he said. Just in case. In case of what? I asked, staring into his eyes, searching for truth. In case someone tries to make you disappear too. His voice was low, calm, but behind it fear. Real fear. Not for himself, but for me. Later, while he stepped out to make a call, I sat alone on the balcony, staring at the waves below. That's when I saw him. A man standing across the street, motionless, watching, not even pretending to hide. Chills ran through me. I quickly snapped a photo, heart pounding, and when Zane returned, I showed it to him. His eyes darkened instantly. That man, he muttered. He's not just following us. He's the one who sent the emails. My breath caught. How do you know? Zane hesitated. Because I saw him the day after the crash, in the investigation room. He said he was with air traffic control, but he lied. What does he want now? I don't know, but I think he believes I have something. Something from Livia's flight. Something I never should have seen. Suddenly everything inside me twisted. The photo, the lies, the fear, and the question I hadn't dared to ask until now. Zane, what if you're not telling me everything? He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it. The storm behind his eyes, the truth he hadn't said. I've been trying to protect you from the whole story, he said. Because if I tell you everything, you may not want to stay. My chest ached, but I'm already in it, with you, all the way. He took a shaky breath, reached for my hand, and held it tight. Then you deserve the truth. All of it. His phone buzzed before he could speak another word. A message popped on the screen. One line. Tell her who Livia really was, or I will. He went pale. I stood there frozen, heart thundering. Who was she? And why did a dead woman still hold the key to everything that was happening to us? The man I was falling for, the man I trusted with my life, wasn't telling me everything. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if it was love that connected us, or something far more dangerous. The night was still too still. The only sound was the crashing of waves below, almost like they were warning me. My heart beat faster, louder. The weight of the words I was about to hear sinking deep. Zane's hands were trembling as he wiped his phone screen and stared at the text message again. His jaw was set, his eyes distant. The calm facade he had worn for so long was cracking. I have to tell you everything, he whispered, barely audible, and I need you to trust me. I nodded, not knowing what else to say, but feeling that every word from him was about to change everything. He took a deep breath, turning away from me for a moment. Livia was. She was everything I ever wanted. My life, my future, but she wasn't just my fiancée. She was involved in something far darker than I knew. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Zane looked at me then, his eyes full of regret. Livia wasn't just an innocent passenger. She was working for a private security firm, a firm that had ties to military contracts and questionable organizations. I didn't know about it until after the crash. I felt my chest tighten. What does that have to do with you? I didn't know what she was involved in. I didn't know what she'd gotten herself into. But I knew she had something important, and I think someone's been looking for it ever since. I froze. What was it? He shook his head slowly. I don't know, but I'm starting to believe it's the reason she died. The reason they came after me. And now, they're coming after you. Who are they? I whispered, my voice shaking. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. I think it's not just one person. I think it's a network. A group that will stop at nothing to get what Livia had. And if that means using me, using you, getting us out of the way, they'll do it. My mind was spinning. But one thing was clearer than ever. We were tangled in something far bigger than either of us. Something that had been pulling at the threads of Zane's past. And now it was pulling at mine. Zane exhaled slowly, his eyes meeting mine, with more vulnerability than I had ever seen. I'm sorry, I should have told you sooner, but I thought I could protect you from this. I thought you'd be safer if I kept you away from the truth. I reached out, my hand touching his. I'm already involved, Zane. I'm already in this with you. His lips parted, as if he was going to say something, but the sound of a knock at the door interrupted us. My heart skipped. Zane's face immediately hardened, his posture shifting from open to guarded. He stood, looking at me with an almost apologetic expression. Stay here. Don't open the door. No matter who it is. My mind raced. Who would be knocking at this hour? Was it them? The people who had been following us. Zane stepped toward the door. But before he could reach the handle, there was another knock, this time more urgent. Zane, I whispered. Who is it? He stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes locking with mine. Stay here, but I couldn't. Something inside me urged me to move. To follow him, I had to know. We couldn't keep running forever. I stood up, my heart racing. The moment I opened the door, I was face to face with the last person I expected. A woman, tall, dark-haired, with an icy expression. She was holding something in her hand, an envelope. Her eyes didn't even flicker when she saw me. Zane's face went pale, and his hand went to his side, like he was preparing for something. "This is for you," she said coldly, handing him the envelope. "But it comes with a warning." Zane took the envelope, his fingers brushing hers. "What's the warning?" he asked, his voice low. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned, walking away, without a glance back. Zane tore open the envelope. His face drained of color as he read the contents. When he finished, he looked at me, eyes wide, lips trembling. "It's a threat," he said. "They know where we are. They know everything." "Who are they?" I asked, desperate for answers. He swallowed hard, his voice strained. "The people who took her life. The ones who won't let me rest until they have what they want." Suddenly, everything changed. The quiet, peaceful life I thought we were building was now a trap, a game we were caught in, with no way out. And somewhere, deep inside, I knew that no matter how hard I tried, I was never going to be able to escape him. The air was thick with fear, thick enough to feel like it was pressing down on my chest, with every breath I took. The envelope Zane held, now crumpled in his shaking hand, had torn through whatever fragile sense of safety we had left. The warning was clear. The threat was real. I couldn't believe this was happening. Not to us. Not after everything we'd been through. But the truth was unavoidable now. We weren't just being hunted. We were trapped in a storm of lies and deceit we couldn't escape. "We need to leave," Zane said, his voice cold. "Now." "No." My voice cracked as I stepped forward, reaching for his arm. "Tell me what's really going on, Zane. Please." He looked at me, his eyes distant, his jaw tight. "You don't understand. The truth could get you killed." "Then I'd rather die knowing the truth." He stared at me for a long moment, his lips parted, but he didn't speak. The weight of the silence hung between us like a storm cloud about to break. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Livia, she wasn't just a passenger on that flight. She was carrying evidence. Evidence that could destroy everything we know about the flight, and about the people behind it. The people who are watching us now." My heart pounded. What evidence? Zane ran a hand through his hair, frustration and fear evident in his eyes. "I don't know. But I think she found something. Something they didn't want anyone to see. And I was supposed to protect it. But I failed." The room felt like it was closing in on me. I wanted to hold him, to tell him everything would be okay. But how could it be? How could anything be okay, when we were in the crossfire of something so dangerous? A sharp knock at the door interrupted my thoughts, and Zane went rigid. "Stay back," he hissed. But I couldn't stay hidden, not anymore. I grabbed his hand. "I'm not leaving you." The knock came again, louder this time, followed by a voice. A man's voice. "Zane, it's time to face the truth." Zane's eyes flickered with recognition, and a cold chill ran down my spine. He wasn't alone in this, and the person on the other side of the door. He knew everything. With a deep breath, Zane opened the door, revealing a tall, intimidating figure. The man was dressed in a sleek suit, his face shadowed by the dim light of the hallway, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "Darren," Zane said quietly. His voice betrayed nothing but calm, even though I could feel the tension rising. Darren's lips curled into a slight smirk. "You've been running, Zane. And now you've dragged someone else into this mess." I stepped forward, feeling a strange sense of defiance rise in me. "Who are you? What do you want with us?" Darren's gaze shifted to me, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "You're the girl, aren't you? The one who thought she could escape this life. But you're deeper in it now than you realize. So is he." He pointed to Zane. Zane stepped forward, his eyes flashing with anger. "You don't know anything about her, don't I?" Darren replied smoothly. "She's tangled in this just like you. And soon she'll be just as much a target as you are. The only difference is, she doesn't know who's really pulling the strings." The words cut through me, and I suddenly felt like I was falling into a world I didn't understand. A world of shadows, lies, and people who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. "Leave her out of this," Zane growled. "Whatever it is you want, you get it from me, not her." Darren smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "It's too late for that, my friend." Without warning, he stepped aside, revealing two armed men standing in the hallway behind him. My blood ran cold. Zane grabbed my arm, pulling me back into the room. "Get to the window," he ordered, his voice sharp. "We're leaving now." I hesitated for a fraction of a second before following his lead. Zane moved swiftly, gathering a few things, his movements calm but deliberate. He was always the calm one in danger, but not this time. I could see the fear in his eyes. Fear for me. "We can't outrun them," he muttered. "But we can hide." Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the hallway, and I turned, my heart racing. The men were coming. Zane grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the back of the room, where a door led to an emergency stairwell. "No more running," he said, determination in his voice. "We fight now." As we descended the stairs, the sound of footsteps grew louder. The walls seemed to close in, and my breath became shallow. We had reached the bottom when Zane turned to me, his face full of raw emotion. "I've put you in danger," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have told you everything, but I never meant for you to get hurt." I shook my head, refusing to let him take the blame. "I'm not afraid, Zane. Not anymore. I'm in this with you." With one final glance, Zane nodded. "Then let's finish this." The door at the bottom of the stairs opened, and the darkness outside swallowed us whole. But in that moment, I realized something. We weren't running anymore. We were fighting for the truth, and for a love that had already faced too many shadows to ever be afraid of the dark again. The world outside was a blur of lights and shadows. The night had swallowed us whole, and as we ran through the alleyways of Barcelona, the sound of footsteps echoing behind us was a constant reminder that we weren't just running from a threat, we were running from our past. Zane's hand was gripping mine like a lifeline, pulling me faster, urging me to move. But the more I ran, the heavier the weight on my chest became. What were we running from? And more importantly, what were we running toward? "We can't go to the airport," Zane panted, his voice low but urgent. "They'll be waiting for us there." I nodded, my breath coming in sharp gasps. We had no time to think, no time to plan, only time to survive. "You have a plan?" I asked, trying to keep up with his long strides. He looked over at me, his eyes hard, determined. "I've always had a plan, but it's a risk. Then we take it." Zane stopped at the corner of an empty street, his gaze scanning the darkness. He seemed to be calculating something, piecing together a puzzle only he could see. His mind was always 5 steps ahead, but I could feel the uncertainty in him now. This wasn't just about protecting me anymore. It was about survival. "We'll need to get to the marina," Zane said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "There's a boat waiting. It'll take us out of the city." "Are you sure it's safe?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He didn't answer immediately, but I saw the conflict in his eyes. His silence said everything. "No, it wasn't safe, but it was our only option. We don't have a choice," he said, after a beat. "We're too deep in this now. No one's going to let us go." We moved quickly, weaving through narrow streets, the sounds of pursuit fading behind us. It was a strange kind of relief, like we had temporarily escaped the clutches of the people who wanted us dead. But I knew better than to believe that. Zane was right. No one was letting us go. As we neared the marina, the quiet of the night was broken by the sound of an engine, a low hum that grew louder with every passing second. My heart skipped a beat. Zane's head whipped around, his eyes narrowing. "They found us." Suddenly, a black SUV skidded to a stop at the end of the street, and before I could react, the doors flew open, and armed men stepped out. Zane pulled me back into an alley, pushing me against the cold brick wall. "Stay down, stay quiet," he whispered. I barely had time to react before the men began searching the street, their eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. Zane's hand was still on mine, keeping me pressed close to the wall, our bodies hidden in the dark. The seconds felt like hours. I could hear my pulse pounding in my ears, the thrum of adrenaline racing through my veins. This was it. If we were caught now. But Zane was focused. His grip tightened on my hand, as he gestured silently toward the end of the alley. There, through a gap in the buildings, I could see the dark shape of a small boat bobbing gently in the water. Our escape. Zane's eyes met mine, and for a split second, everything else disappeared. In that look, I saw it. The desperation, the fear, but also the resolve. We were in this together. And no matter what, we weren't giving up. He nodded toward the boat, signaling for me to follow. My breath caught in my throat as we darted from the alley, moving swiftly, quietly, like shadows. But as we reached the marina's edge, we froze. The boat was gone. I turned to Zane, panic rising in my chest. What happened? Where is it? He cursed under his breath, his eyes scanning the water. They must have gotten to it before we did. We were trapped. Then, a voice behind us, cold and calculated, cut through the night. Did you really think you could just disappear, Zane? Darren's voice was like ice, sending a chill down my spine. Zane's hand shot out, pulling me toward him, keeping me close. I don't have time for this, Darren. Oh, but you do, Darren said, stepping into the light. His cold, calculating gaze flicked to me, then back to Zane. You've been running, hiding, and now you're finally going to face the consequences. The armed men were closing in. Zane turned to me, his face set with determination. You need to go. Now. No, his hissed, gripping his arm. I'm not leaving you. He looked at me, a brief flash of something soft in his eyes before it hardened again. This is bigger than both of us. If you stay here, if you're caught, they'll never let you go. You need to trust me. Get to safety. I'll handle this. I shook my head. I'm not leaving you, Zane. We're in this together. Before he could say anything else, the men reached us, their weapons drawn. The final confrontation was upon us. Zane took a deep breath, his jaw clenched. Then let's make it count. And with that, everything blurred into chaos. Gunfire echoed through the marina. Zane's movements were swift, calculated, a blur of action as he fought, his every move designed to keep me safe. I couldn't watch him fight like this, not without knowing he was risking everything for me. In the midst of the chaos, I saw the boat, a new one, quickly arriving from the shadows. There was a woman at the helm, her face hidden in the darkness. Get in, she shouted. Zane pulled me toward the boat, and together, we jumped into the waiting vessel, just as the sounds of pursuit grew louder behind us. The engine roared to life, and we shot into the dark, open water. But as the city lights faded behind us, I knew we weren't truly free. Not yet, because the people who were hunting us weren't finished. And neither were we. The boat surged forward, cutting through the dark water, the engine growling beneath our feet as the coastline of Barcelona slipped farther and farther behind us. I could still hear the echoes of gunfire in my mind, the sound of Zane's swift movements, the way he kept me safe. But the farther we got, the more I realized our escape wasn't just a moment of relief. It was just the beginning of the end. Zane was sitting across from me, his hands gripping the edge of the boat as his eyes scanned the horizon. His jaw was tight, and I could see the exhaustion in his features, the weight of everything he had been carrying for so long. But there was no time for rest, no time to reflect. Zane, I said, my voice soft but firm, what's really going on? You keep telling me to trust you, but I need to understand. I need to know who we're running from and why. He didn't look at me at first. Instead, he stared out at the dark waters, the night stretching endlessly in front of us. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the fear, the regret, the pain. Finally he spoke, his voice low and steady. It's all tied to Livia. She found something she wasn't supposed to. But she didn't just find evidence about the crash, Alara. She found out about something bigger, something darker. There's a network of people, high-level, untouchable people, and they'll do anything to protect their interests. Why didn't you tell me before? I whispered, my chest tightening. I couldn't. You weren't ready to hear it, he admitted. I thought I could protect you from this. But now it's too late. I swallowed hard. Too late for what? Zane turned toward me, his eyes filled with a desperation I had never seen before. They're going to kill us, Alara. They'll keep coming until they get what they want. And right now, what they want is me. And you. My heart raced as the reality of his words sank in. For the first time, I felt the full weight of the danger we were in. But there was something more, something deeper than fear. The need to fight back. We're not going down without a fight, I said, more to myself than to him. But Zane heard me, and a small, almost imperceptible smile crossed his lips. That's my girl, he murmured. The wind whipped through the boat as we sped into the unknown, the vastness of the ocean stretching before us. But even as the boat surged forward, I could feel the past catching up. The people we were running from weren't just shadows. They were real, powerful, and relentless. They wouldn't stop until we were gone, until Zane was gone. Suddenly the boat jolted, and I grabbed the side to steady myself. Zane stood immediately, his expression hardening. "Someone's following us," he said, his voice taut with urgency. I looked back over my shoulder, but the night was too dark to see clearly. But the feeling in my gut, the cold, sinking feeling, told me everything I needed to know. "They're catching up," Zane continued, his eyes scanning the waters behind us. "We need to move faster." I nodded, my heart racing as Zane pushed the throttle forward, the boat surging ahead. But even as we sped through the water, I knew we weren't going to outrun them. "They'll keep coming until we're dead, won't they?" I asked, my voice shaking. Zane's eyes met mine, and for a moment all the chaos of the world disappeared. There was only us, only this moment. "Yes, but I won't let that happen." Suddenly, a light appeared behind us, a single beam cutting through the night, growing brighter, closer. My heart stopped. "They're right on us," Zane said, his voice grim. I reached out, taking his hand, feeling the coldness of his skin against mine. "Zane, what do we do?" He glanced at me, his eyes fierce. "We fight. We do what we need to do to survive. You're not alone in this, Alara." And then, the boat ahead of us opened fire. The sound of bullets slicing through the air filled my ears, the sharp crack echoing across the water as Zane swerved, narrowly avoiding the shots. My heart pounded in my chest, but I refused to look away. I refused to let fear control me. Not now, not when it mattered most. Zane's hands moved with precision, his focus sharp as he maneuvered the boat, dodging the incoming fire. His eyes were locked on the water ahead, the future unknown, but his resolve unshakable. "We're almost there," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. I nodded, gripping his hand tighter as the boat surged toward a darkened cove ahead, the narrow passage opening up before us. But just as we neared the mouth of the cove, the pursuing boat turned sharply, closing in on us from both sides. "We won't make it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Zane didn't answer. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than anything he could say. He reached down, pulling out a small device from the compartment beside him. With a few quick movements, he attached it to the boat's engine. A moment later, the boat jerked violently, and Zane's face darkened. "Now we fight," he said. I didn't have time to ask what he meant. The engine exploded with a deafening roar, and the boat was suddenly thrust into a chaotic spin, the force of the explosion throwing us off course. The attacker's boat was thrown into disarray as well, their momentary confusion giving us just enough time to make our move. Zane took the opportunity, steering us into the cove with a fierce determination. We had no plan, no backup, just one shot at survival. But as we reached the cove's entrance, a figure stepped out of the shadows. A woman, dark-haired, cold-eyed and powerful. "Get out of the boat," she said, her voice clipped and commanding. We froze. "You have no idea what you're involved in, Zane," she continued, her gaze shifting to me, cold and calculating. "And now you'll pay the price." Zane's hand tightened around mine. "I won't let you hurt her." The woman smiled, a cruel, knowing smile. "We'll see about that." And in that moment I realized there was no escape. Not from this, not from the darkness we had stepped into. The battle for our survival had only just begun.